I grew up in the country on a farm and came to Melbourne to become a teacher. I'm married and we have a son. Another 21-year-old lives in our home and a 15-year-old foster child. I have a busy house, I have lots of young people coming and going, and I enjoy it.
I like to keep busy, and I think that's something I probably inherited from my mother, who's a very busy person. I am working full-time, I'm studying part-time, and I'm involved in a number of voluntary activities, so I guess all the hustle and bustle sort of combines together to make me. And where I am now, you know, I have space to provide respite for those children that my mother looks after.
As a child myself, I was always attracted to spending time with younger children and guiding them and giving them interesting activities to do, a bit bossy probably. When we had our own first child and she got to be about 4 or 5, we thought, well, we'd really like more than one child in our lives. And foster caring was a way of lifting the tempo a bit, giving us a few more challenges and doing something that we could feel really proud of. We have 2 of our own children, 1 child in permanent care, 1 regular respite, who is a sibling of the one in permanent care, and then we take babies and toddlers for weekends and short-term emergency placements as well.
It just seemed a natural thing to do. My mother could always find space for someone who needed to come and stay, cousins from the city and things like that. And I suppose that was how it began.
I had been listening to my local radio station for some time, and there was always an ad for our local agency on the station that came up from time to time, and it just felt like I heard it one day at the right time. We had spoken about it the night before and were thinking of which agency we would go with, and I heard the ad again, so I just pulled over and wrote the telephone number down with a lip line, a pen on a bank card receipt or something at the time, and made the phone call.
It's something my mother had always wanted to do even before she had my brother and I. Started off doing short-term and emergency sort of stuff, and now Mum does longer-term stuff as well. And I guess I just sort of gradually got more and more involved as I get older. I mean, you're around kids, you help out, you know, and I guess became more and more comfortable in working with them and working within the system.
We had a child of our own who was living, and still is living, a very comfortable, privileged, sheltered sort of life. We wanted to give her the opportunity to feel the satisfaction of contributing to the community and understanding that not everybody's life is as easy as hers. We had a good experience of our first contact. We spoke to a duty worker who was really keen to hear from us because I was a stay-at-home mum, and it was very difficult to find carers who were available to look after small children and stay at home. The worker came to our home half a dozen times, I guess, for a couple of hours each time, and worked through a very long workbook with us, and we had a couple of days of training as well.
Myself, I think it probably took about 8 months or so, but then that was because at the time I was being accredited to provide support to my mother. It wasn't the highest priority, so I mean that's something that has to be taken into account as well, as I wasn't going to be providing care for children myself initially.
The assessment process is pretty good. If there are issues along the way, the worker that works with you raises those, so you're pretty clear by the time you get to the end of the assessment process that it will all be fine.
Initially, I guess it can be quite scary, and it's extremely new experience. You know, even when you do look after someone else's children, it's generally they'll come and visit, or you might be babysitting, and you hand them back. You know, but having someone else's child completely in your care, I think is a really novel experience for people at that first time. But look, it gets easier, and it just becomes part of day-to-day life, really.
You have to be passionate to do this. You have to learn as you go along, learning how to manage and let things happen a bit sometimes, and I think it's really hard. It's hard when children buck your authority. I'm sure there's not a parent out there who doesn't struggle with some of the challenges that life throws up.
When someone rings and says, oh, I've got a baby for you for the weekend, I look at my calendar and I look at what's on for the rest of the family, and I usually say, I can if. If I think about it in the can if instead of I can't because, I find we're just a lot more productive and we do a lot more.
As you get more experienced and used to, the experience of a new child coming into your care and settling them down and establishing, I guess, the norm for that placement, because it's different in every placement, the more the foster carer can help the child, I guess, comprehend their new reality and just help them settle into day-to-day life again.
What we really do is we just live our lives, and our lives might be a bit different to people who don't have foster children, but we just try to make our lives as normal as possible, and we just share it with other people who bring diversity and interest and sometimes complications into our lives. I'd be lying if I said there weren't hard times. These children have such sad stories. The things that occur to them before they come to foster care, the journeys that they've had at young ages are really sad. That has an impact on who you are. Some of the stories you'll never forget. But it's just about being there.
You can't help but become attached to a young child. I mean, people have babies, people have toddlers, people have, 7, 8-year-olds, and you welcome them into your home and you make, them a part of your family and your friends and community. You become very attached to that young person, and then they have to go home. And, that's a bit of a rip out of your heart too, if you've given that child lots of love and care.
I think the most important thing for me in managing the behaviours of children and young people and speaking to other foster carers is to get people to remember where these children have come from and try and understand what they've experienced and why those behaviours are coming out. If we understand why it's happening, it's a lot easier to I guess not to take it personally, which is really important.
One of the challenges is also about not having too high expectations of young people, because I think even my son will say to me, I just want you to be proud of me.
There are times for a split second I think, why are we doing this? But that's sort of the colour of our life, I guess. That's what we choose to do, and we feel proud of what we do.
So often when you speak to foster carers, they just tell you about how much they love it, how they wouldn't be the person they are today without it. I mean, that's certainly the case for me. I definitely wouldn't be who I am today without it.
I love knowing that sometimes they're in a space where they don't have to remember some of the bad things that have happened to them, or bad things that they've seen, or just that privilege of being there to watch a child reach milestones and share those moments with them.
It's genuinely fun, sometimes, not always, but it can be genuinely fun to just be around children and have them in your life. I think, children in life is something that we all enjoy. And it's no different with foster children and young people, and you have that added satisfaction of really feeling like you're making a big difference to their future happiness.
A lot of young people have actually come back and, wanted to know things, or just wanted to know that I was still there, and it's just a terrific thing to be able to, to give a 25-year-old woman with a little baby on her hip a big hug, and, it's so good to see them, and it's so good to see that they've made good choices in their life and that they've grown and developed into beautiful young people.
Children and young people can take so much from even a short stint in foster care. The way I describe it to people is that, they've come from potentially a horrendous situation, but that's the only situation they've known. For them, that's reality. That's how families work. What foster care does, even for a short stint, is allows that child or young person to see different reality, you know, how things could be, how life can be, you know, that things can be positive and that you can have positive relationships with people. Even if it's just that small glimpse, that's something a child can take away with them. So it's not only for that particular child or young person, it's for their children and young people as well. And, you know, it's for our community, for our society. I think it has the potential to be a healing process.
In the initial training, you get a comprehensive manual with all you need to know, but no manual ever tells you all you need to know. It would be like a manual on parenting.
There's always caseworker support. You know, there's 24-hour a day, 7-day a week access to a caseworker from, you know, the team that handles that child for support or questions or an emergency. So it's really not like you're doing it on your own.
There's post-accreditation training. You have opportunities to sit down with other carers and look at subjects which might be affecting all of you, challenging behaviours or working with parents with drug addictions, those sorts of things. And most agencies offer the opportunity for a secondary consultation with a psychologist. So you can sit down and talk specifically about your child, the behaviours that they're exhibiting and how you're best to manage and handle those. Our agency had an infant support group. There were about half a dozen of us at the time who all had infants, and some of those infants had some similar issues. So we got together every 6 or 8 weeks and talked about what it was like caring for infants in care.
Typical nuclear family is what people often see as you know, your typical foster carers, but that's really not the case anymore. It may have used to have been you know, the couple with one partner at home and they looked after the foster children, and, you know, there was a single income or what have you, but there are so many more different types of foster care households now.
If you ever go to a foster care function, you look around the room and I think everyone finds it hard finding someone else like them because we are so different. There are, you know, young single men and older women, couples, gay families, lesbian families, people with kids, people without kids, people of, you know, different nationalities, very religious people. It's great.
There's quite a diverse pool of children and young people that need care, and each one of those children and young people has a very specific set of needs. So the more diverse our pool of foster carers are, the more likely we're actually able to be able to meet those needs of those children and young people and match them up appropriately with foster carers where they're going to flourish in that environment. So it's really important.
Sometimes we need to focus on how we can do something rather than all the multitude of reasons why we can't, or worries that the timing's not quite right. There'll always be reasons and excuses why we don't do things, and sometimes you've just got to say, how can I?
It doesn't take a superhuman effort. You've just, I think, really got to want to make that difference and be committed to that. It is a difficult task, but there's so much that can be gained for it from these children and young people and from yourself as well. It's just such an enriching experience.
If you've got children and you've got space, you know, it doesn't matter. There's, you know, you still got to do the things that you do when you've got a family. And if you haven't and you're interested in having children in your life, it's also a good experience. I mean, there are lots of opportunities that you can enhance a young person's life, and you can give them opportunities that they haven't had before.
When you actually know some of these children and you know, put a face to some of these children, they're not just, you know, numbers on a piece of paper. You find it really, really difficult to imagine not wanting to help them.
My husband once said, it's not rocket science. You just, you know, it's just natural. It's what you do when you've, you know, got kids, a few more kids, another kid, you know, makes life interesting.
Not only just being there for them, but actually, you know, improving their future opportunities as well. It's just, I just can't imagine not wanting to give to that, really.
It's not a saintly act. It's not an act of giving. It's an act of sharing and an act of living. It's about how you live your life.